everybody, Thy Lord Root here, and welcome back to my KSP tutorial. So, we are back in the VAB, and we lost our rocket. It occurs to me we forgot to save it. Well, the game thought of that for us, actually. It, auto-saved it for us. But every time you make a new rocket, as you might imagine, you run into this issue to where you really do want, this guide to be saved, so you can type a name up here, maybe even a description like just enough to get into orbit. Actually, more than enough. And then you can hit save after you type up your name, and that'll work. Now, I have here a subassembly that I've already created, but let's assume that I want to save this for future use. What I can do is click on this guy up here, the Enable Advanced Mode, click on Subassemblies. I could take this guy, drag them all down, and maybe we'll call it the Midget Mark 1, and maybe a light orbital launcher. Now, some things about this. This guy was 2.6 tons, but we want to create a probe, right? So we know that this guy can get anything below 2.6 tons down. I'm going to start out by using this Advanced tab here. Although we can go here to the probes, I'm going to select the Probidobodyne Octo, which has a couple of things and a couple of methods of control. The first is this guy right here, the reaction wheel. This is also in most of the command pods, but not in all the probes. You see, reaction wheels allow you to turn your probes around without any other means of turning. So this guy, you'd have to attach another mechanism for control. We know a little bit about engine gimbaling as well. If we just go here to the cross-section profile, this is a 0.625 meter part. We'll put on this Oscar B fuel tank and put on the spark engine, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Now, for this guy, we actually do have quite a bit of delta V. If we look at this, outside of the atmosphere, we have almost 2,000 meters per second, which is quite handy, if I do say so myself. But, we might want to move it around as well. So, we have a different kind of fuel. This is monopropellant. This is used for reaction control jets. If we throw this on here, it does cost us a bit of delta V as a result. We can tweak this to give us a little bit more, because we don't really need all that much. Our mileage will be quite good, so I'm going to bring that down to 16. And what we'll do there is we'll begin outfitting this thing into something that would be useful for a probe. First of all, I'll put on these RCS jets, and the way you want to do that is you want to find your center of mass, which is right there in the center. You can grab these guys here if you want, and probably best thing to do there is get it right in the center. Now this will change as your fuel goes down, but we're so close to it that it really doesn't make much of a difference. This thing has, it consumes power. How much power do you ask? Well, it consumes about, it looks like, 0.12 per minute. We'll go with this guy, actually, because, this guy does not have reaction wheels built in. And so I will show you briefly. We'll pull this stage off. We'll throw him on. The mass is much lighter with this guy. And he has a short profile. But he takes more battery power here. And, you know, maybe compared to this guy, you know, he doesn't have reaction wheels. So we'll go over here under control. We'll get the 0.625 meter reaction wheels here and throw them down. Now we want something to make this guy interesting. You don't need antennae on probes, but it wouldn't hurt to have one. And the way you can do that is you go to Science, and you pick this guy out. This guy is massless, so I'm going to throw him on. But he's rather hard to get centered correctly as well, so I'm just going to hit Alt, and that'll snap it to the attachment node. Now, there are various things we want to do while we're in space. And some of these are massless parts as well. For instance, this gravioli. I could take this guy and get it to snap on like that. And I will additionally take, I don't know, maybe a thermometer? That could be kind of nice as well. Although really maybe what would be cool to put up is, oh, that's a little big. That is a little small, so I'm not going to do the resources just yet. We'll put that gravioli back on. Even though we're not really planning on doing science, we'll put on a barometer as well. We'll put on the accelerometer, even though I don't think you can collect accelerometer info while flying, because you have to be on the ground. But we'll stick it on there nonetheless, and thermometer as well. And that is going to be one deal here. But if you look at this, it says we're running out of electric charge. It warns us about that for good reason. So we can throw on some solar panels as well. If we go to utility here, we can click on these guys, which will give us these solar panels that sort of extend outwards. There are two variants, or four variants of them. You have two that are 1x6 and two that are 3x2. And the ones with the cases you can stick back in, I believe. And that's all well and good, but we want, when this thing's on the dark side of the planet, we want it to have power as well. So what we'll do is we will put batteries on this. I will call this the Probulon. Now, interesting things about this. There are some differences between that and this guy right here. This guy doesn't move around, but it's massless. It's not all that expensive either, so it's worth possibly considering having one. That's not the only way to get power either. We can throw on this radioisotope generator, which generates power no matter what, but not very much of it. At 45 charge per minute, that is less than what this guy here does. Now, not only that, but you know, there are fuel cells as well that stick on the side here. They will burn up the fuel with oxidizer, I believe. Well, let's call that good enough for now. And what we can do here is we can go to the action groups, because zooming in on these is going to be difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the part I want, click on custom 1, and log gravity data. And when I do that, when I press the 1 key, it will deploy the gravity sensor. So I'll just do this all around. And we will now want to do some other things with that as well. Ooh. I need to be in a separate deal here. Or you could fire them all at once, which may be okay for what you're trying to do. So, we wanted a coupler on this, but we want a small one. In fact, I'm going to put a stack separator on this. This is like a decoupler, except whenever you fire it, it's not attached to anything. And one moment about that, it's I'm preparing to eat with my mother shortly after this, it being Mother's Day and all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that stage that we saved here. Now, we didn't take the decoupler off of it, but there are going to be problems if we try to launch this. The first problem is that this thing has a weird shape to it, and it's going to create a lot of drag on the top. And I can demonstrate that for you real quickly. We'll just save this guy here. And we will try that. Now, if you hit F12, in addition to taking a screenshot, because I'm on Steam, it'll say aerodynamic forces overlays enabled. We'll just launch straight up, turn on stability assist, and as soon as we begin to get up to speed, you can see these blue lines are barely visible. Those are our lift vectors. But you will see a red line poke out of the back of the rocket pretty soon, like that. And that is our drag. Now there's some things. The reason we're doing a gradual gravity turn, let's try to flip this over like this. When we turn around, you can see we are developing drag on this, and because we got the fins on there, it'll generate lift, to keep us over there. But if we go too far beyond our prograde vector, then the drag is too much, and it will generally cause us to flip out. Well, I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to deal with this pancaking situation that we have here, because there are other reasons you don't want to do that. They could, those things could catch on fire. If you go to aerodynamics, you'll see this AEFF1 protective aeroshell. And what we can do with that is we can just build a nice little fairing around it. And what's really nifty about this is that throw this guy on like so, you can still operate on it if you want to make changes to it. So that's pretty cool. We'll just save that. And now we will launch this thing. Now I want to go into a polar orbit, and the thing about doing a polar orbit is that if you click on here to look at your orbital velocity, you will see that this thing, you have, in terms of orbital velocity, 174 meters per second of delta V. Oh, and another thing too, before I forget, we'll just revert back to the VAB real quick. If we bring up Flight Engineer here, then you can see our thrust to weight ratio is pretty high. Now, we want it ideally to be no more than 1.6. I'm going to go with 1.4. And you can adjust that by right-clicking on the engine and then tweaking it. I think I'm also going to throw Flight Engineer on here as well. Just one of them. That'll give us some readings. And this isn't a bad mod to have. It is a very nice mod from my perspective. Some purists may think of it as cheating. I think of it as a tool to get to where we need to get going. It makes the gameplay a lot faster. And you'll see a bunch of numbers over here. Now, we already know what apoapsis is and periapsis is. But what about our time to apoapsis? Why are we keeping track of that? Well, partially because we want this number to stay real high. And so I forgot to pitch. I'm going to go polar here. It is best, in my experience with this, to overshoot rather than undershoot. You see also we have inclination. This is our angle relative to the equator in this case. And I am just going to change our staging just a little bit. You can see that we have quite a high apsis here. We do want to be careful. Adjusting inclination this far out can be disaster, or this early on, particularly in a case like this, and we do have to worry about that because in our case it's not so good to have a high inclination. Anyway, we prefer to be pretty high up here and going up pretty fast. We prefer an inclination, in this case, of 90 because we're going polar. So once we get out of the atmosphere, we can begin making changes towards that. I'm going to go with a high orbit because we can assume. I'm just going to pop the fairings now. we can assume that while normally you'd want a, yeah, we'll do like that, I think. Let's just take a look and see what we have here. Shouldn't take too much delta V, I don't think. We'll just have to get out of the atmosphere. How much delta V will it take? Well, to circularize, probably a couple hundred. And you can tell when you are almost circular, because if you are close to that point, these guys will move into the middle. That's 266, that's not too bad. Now that we're up here, we can right click on our solar panels and deploy them. But let's just do our circularization burn now. Still plenty of delta V to work with, and I'm just going to warp to this guy here. You can see our nav ball did funny things because, largely because of the fact that we were going over the pole and there's a singularity there. That is to say that that's sort of where the math breaks down. We have 11 seconds, so we're going to burn about 5 seconds in. Or rather, 5 seconds early. And we can watch this guy from over here. Now, we're a little bit high. I have no desire to correct that, of course, but you know, there are issues now. First of all, how do we fix that? Well, one thing we can do is we can go retrograde, and we want to do that at periapsis because that's where we have the most energy. Whenever you burn retrograde, you bring down one side of your orbit. So let's just warp. Ooh. Or we could raise it here. There's really two ways we can go about this. We have our RCS fuel, and if we turn around like this, you can see it's expending some of it. You can turn that on, by the way, by pressing R. But if we want to raise our orbit, then we can come over the poles like this, hit R, and then hit H to fire these guys forward. And we're fairly circular. So RCS, in addition to moving heavy things around, is good for, I suppose, for doing small adjustment burns. Now that we're in a circular orbit, we have another issue we want to deal with. That issue is, how do we get this guy aligned? Well, one way you can do it is you can set this guy here and you can do the descending node, and the further out you are, the better. We just want to push that in as much as we can. So the descending node, in this case, is where we cross with the orbit of the moon. If you were to draw an imaginary line, that's part of the reason why I wanted to be high up. If you did it lower down, then you would find that when you burned at the descending node where it's most efficient, or at the ascending node, either way, that you would waste a little bit more fuel. But it's not the only thing, because well, for one, we're actually going clockwise here. We'll make that adjustment over here. You usually, if you want to decrease your angle, this is your ascending node, so you want to do anti-normal. Anti-normal is sort of the direction opposite of your craft. And there we go, we're in a polar orbit, or thereabout. Now, because we have Flight Engineer, I don't have to be in the map to watch this. And I'm just going to time warp on over here. There we go. That is a 6-second burn. And we are on the dark side. If we look at this, where our solar panels are at, we're actually on the Terminator, I think. The Terminator being the circle that separates light and day, or day and night. Let's point towards the target, or not towards the target, towards the maneuver node. We were pointing in the wrong direction. And let's make this burn happen. We need to burn at about 3 seconds. I'm just going to watch my inclination over here until we get it to about where we want it to. Now I'm going to use RCS to make fine adjustments to this. This is about as close as I think we're going to be able to get. That is more perfect than reasonable. Now if you want to, let's say we wanted to increase our altitude here, we need to come over to our periapsis again and push up one end of our orbit, because we're trying to increase altitude. Let's say we want to go to 300. But because we're trying to do that, we need to get as close as we can. I went a little bit far, so I'm going to hit N on my RCS here and get us at about 300. When we burn from our periapsis in the prograde direction, then what it does is it ends up raising our apoapsis when we're burning from the periapsis. Likewise, when we do it from apoapsis, it will raise our periapsis as well. Again, you'll notice as we pull out, we lose orbital velocity And that is largely because of the fact that, we have to go slower. Now, we're almost here. I'm going to lightly tap the throttle to raise our periapsis to this height. And we'll do it now. So there we go. Periapsis is well within where it needs to be. It doesn't have to be perfectly circular. In fact, I almost guarantee you that it won't be. You just want to, if you look at your eccentricity, which should be right here, if it's, you know, 0.0 something or 0.00 something, then you're more or less at a circular orbit. Now, one other thing. Let's say we want to get back to the planet. Now, we talked about how it was inefficient to burn down, but I think you should see that. Let's just give that a shot. We'll burn straight on down. Let's see what happens to our apoapsis. Our periapsis hasn't changed much, but our apoapsis has increased quite a big deal. Or quite a good deal, rather. So the way we can handle this is, even though we're out of fuel, and this is kind of an important deal here, we can make a burn at apoapsis to lower our periapsis to where it needs to be. I guess at this time, you know, we may wish to take science, so I'm going to hit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it turns out you can't do a seismic scan in space. I had expected that, but it's, you know, I figured I'd try it nonetheless. Anyway, I'm going to hit H, and now we are much more effectively burning towards the planet here. We may or may not have enough fuel to get back down. But that'll be okay, actually, because I do want to show off. If we get to, let's say like a periapsis of 45. We have the question of what may happen. Now, I cannot put these guys back in, unfortunately. But, that means they may get ripped off in the process of re-entering. But this is a lot higher than the 20 kilometers that we re-entered at last time. What happens whenever we get to periapsis? Well, one thing that happens here, we still have RCS on, is I want you to pay close attention to this guy. We are receiving drag from the atmosphere, and the deeper that we dip down, the more effect that drag has on us. So, you know, just for the purposes of illustration, I'm going to show this to you. You can see that our periapsis is decreasing just a little bit, but our apoapsis is actually coming down quite a great deal. This is a process known as aerobraking. And what will happen is, in this case, we have now aerobraked into the planet. But if you set your apsis high enough, then, you know, you will be able to, stay in orbit. And that's kind of the deal here. However, because we're coming in the way we are, because these guys are essentially huge sails, we're getting slowed down a lot. And let's just speed up time here. We have no shielding on here whatsoever. You can see these bars are now coming up and we're overheating. Solar panels will probably rip off on their own just because they cannot withstand high wind. Although the fact that they haven't surprises me. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I made that happen. This guy surprisingly, and we'll just turn this off. This guy surprisingly survived. It may be partially due to that engine taking most of the heat, but our batteries overheated, and this can be dangerous. And, yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a problem. I thought maybe I would kind of very briefly give you an idea of one more thing. We don't have a lot of control over this, but let's take off all of the instrumentation. Let's take off the RCS and everything like that. Let's just let's see if we can get a hyperbolic trajectory. We almost could. I think what we'll do about that is I'll zoom in just a little bit. I'll throw on an extra fuel tank. And I'll take these guys off as well. We'll get this Oscar B tank going. And we'll pull those guys out. Now, we have over 6,000 meters per second of Delta V. I most decidedly will not save that. But, what I will do, eventually, and maybe in the next episode, I will take this guy to the moon. In the interim, let's get this, moving about as quickly as we can. And I will show you what a hyperbolic orbit looks like, because you have really three kinds of orbits or trajectories. We are on a ballistic trajectory right now, which means that we're a parabola coming out of the ground. And that's, that basically means we'll fall back to Earth. You know, suppose we want to launch this thing into solar orbit, then what we can do there is we can get this guy going from the spot that he needs to. We don't necessarily have to get him into orbit right now. You can see we're turning just a little bit. If we go straight up, then we know that we will maintain this parabola, this ballistic trajectory that we have. But, you know, we'll get on up and we'll jettison those fairings soon. The nice thing about the fairings, of course, is that, they make it easier for us to get through the atmosphere. Unfortunately, that also means that because of something called max Q, the total, or the maximum pressure will be higher on us eventually. But we're coming out of there. It's probably good for us to jettison those fairings now. You can see we have a little bit of orbital velocity, and we're coming out pretty quickly. We'll probably get quite far with this. But, that stage is almost jettisoned. Let's see how far we got so far. We are at 604. Let's turn these guys on. And, apparently blow things up, too. Now, it's actually possible, if you have the moon in the right position, to go directly to the moon this way, and we may get a moon encounter. I'm not going to try it, because it's, not an easy way to do it, but if we keep on burning here, you can see we now have this hyperbola. You can see it, it moved out, quite quickly, and we can zoom out and see the trajectory it's going to take. It's going to the sun, it looks like. Now, this is not the best way to go, the sun, by any means. But, you know, at this point now we have we've basically overcome the amount of energy that we need, and that has allowed us to escape. And if we continue along this path, I'll zoom out, and I will time warp down to this point. You can see we're going at full time warp here. This, when you're doing interplanetary space like this, it can take days, which makes even 100 times time warp really, really small. We are at the point right now to where the only thing we can really see is the sun because of our distance. And, oh, this is a nifty new feature. I had not known about this. Apparently being close to the sun means you have to deal with heating. And if we turn that on, I bet you the sky is beginning to bake. Very interesting. We might have to do a probe to the sun pretty soon just to see. This update is awesome. I don't know what else to say about it. But yeah, we'll use that knowledge in order for us to go to the moon, and that will be something that we will cover next time. Until then, this has been Thy Lord Root, and I will see you later.